Don't get too creative. That's what's going to be the title of section 1. Yeah, go quick. Oh my gosh. Okay, all right. Now, here's what goes in section 1, all right? There's a very brief paragraph that sort of like clearly states the question, which we're going to come up with a question. You'll have it in there, okay? And then the biggest chunk of section 1 is 2 paragraphs. Each of them dealing with your top 2 sources for your paper. And for each of those sources, in each of those paragraphs, you will do an OPVL. Like you did for the film festival, freshman year, first and second semester, sophomore year, first and second semester. You're like, why are we doing this? It's like, this is what historians do, right? You identify the source, and it's like the handwritten stuff we got here. Look at the very bottom of page 86, my handwritten stuff there. You're going to be using very explicit language, like the origin of this source, one of the 2 sources, is da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You're going to talk about the author's credentials and where they came from, whether they're a journalist or they're an eyewitness or what. Then you go on to the purpose of this source, this particular thing, is to da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You want to be explicit so then when the reader is going through, they're like, oh, here's the origin part, here's the purpose part, here's the value part, here's the limitations part. Roughly, you're probably going to end up with 200-ish words for each of those 2 paragraphs, and then combined with your introductory little paragraph and so forth. That's how it works out. Can you do that? Does that seem very hard? It's not. If you've got an eyewitness source, what is the value of an eyewitness source?
I don't know.
They were there. Right, they saw it. What's a potential limitation to historians? They're like, I've got this eyewitness source. I have to take every word they say. There could be a bias. They might not have actually seen the whole thing. They might not understand kind of everything that was going on. You do that, pick your top 2 sources, and do section 1 on your top 2 sources. It's actually pretty straightforward. Should we go to the next page? All right. Look to page 87. Okay, at the very top of 87 is some stuff about picking your question. We've already talked about this before. I'm going to work on the question with you. You don't just come up with it all yourself. Okay? You'll appreciate that. Because, like, for example, some people in IB, they love to what extent. I don't like to what extent questions. Because to what extent questions, sometimes the students are like, right here, this is the extent. Right here. Boom. That's the answer. I'm like, no. IB wants you to have a controversial question. Some yes, some no. So we phrase our questions like yes or no, or this or that. Some kind of comparative type thing. Don't worry about that so much at this stage. You ready? Figure out what you're interested in. Guys, figure out what you're interested in, and is there enough sources to do a decent history paper on it? Okay? Now, all right, next. The investigation, the guts of the paper. Here we go. Section 2. The title of the investigation section is called Section 2, Investigation. Really boring, but, you know, don't try and get too stylistic on this. Okay? And you'll put the word count there. Somewhere about 1,300 words total. What's going to be in there? It's going to be the gist of your paper. It's going to be the research. It's kind of like, this is a research paper that's got some weird Section 1 thing, and it's got some weird reflection thing, Section 3. The guts of the paper is Section 2, and it's only 1,300 words. It actually goes by pretty quickly. Listen carefully. Probably in the beginning of your investigation, you'll have like a paragraph, no more than 2 paragraphs of like background. So don't just jump right into the middle of your question. Give us some background so we know kind of what this is all going on. But not too much background because you want to get to the question. How do you organize the question? Well, if your question is, did such and such, and the answer is yes or no, here's an easy organizational tactic. 1 paragraph, after the introductory paragraph, that focuses on the yes. The next paragraph focuses mostly on the no. Cool. And then a conclusion. Do I care what your conclusion is? Well, no. You're like trying to guess what the right answer is. If your question is debatable, it's controversial, there's a lot of yes and there's a lot of no, your conclusion is going to be, well, this, that, and so forth, but yeah, you kind of come down a little bit on one side or the other. It's okay. If it is a slam dunk, clearly answered question, we need to change the question some so that it's a little bit more nuanced. Okay? Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I'll help you with that. Like I did with a student who did theirs on the Korean comfort women and the Japanese government, whether justice was done. She's like, no justice was done. Well, there was a little bit. Okay, a little bit. Well, good. Well, then we'll move the question so that we get to that point. Okay? Notice I put on the side there, at least 6 good sources. Yes, at least. Well, if you don't have more sources, it's not well researched enough. That's right. Very good. You were paying attention. For section 1, you evaluate your top 2. But for your paper, you're going to rely on at least 6 really good sources. Oh my gosh, belay that question, okay? If we haven't covered, we don't have time to cover that right now. The answer is probably no, although we'll come back to that. Can you ask that question again next time?
Yes.
And we'll see, we'll explore it a little bit. Because I've been exploring it with some of the classes, because some people are like, yay, we love it. Other people are like, I hate it. But it's problematic because of the whole quarantine and things like that and so forth. So, but we'll work it through. So like, yeah, Kylie's like, we'll figure it out. Yeah, some of you guys did a great job on your film last time because you got a lot of it done ahead of time. I mean, you just, like you met. I mean, yeah, there was one video, had a whole bunch of you guys in, I remember. Because it was filmed before, like, the quarantine. All right, any questions on section 2? All right, section 3 will not, cite extensively. Oh my gosh, when you're writing the investigation part, you have to cite extensively. I've read some papers sometimes and it's like, wow, that student did a lot of research. I wonder what their sources are. They didn't put the citations in. You need to do that. Lots and lots. Interesting question. If you quote something directly, do you need to cite it? Yeah. How about this one? If you paraphrase something.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, very good. All right, this is good. And if you're like, when in doubt, cite it. Okay, cite it, cite it, cite it. You do not want to be accused of plagiarism, academic dishonesty. Dishonesty is bad all around. It gets in the way, but academically they're like, yeah, we're not even going to feel anything personal about this. You didn't cite it. You're wrong. And so that's really, I mean, this is like really bad. So, I mean, like you do the research. Just be careful when you're doing the research that you make note of where you find things because it makes it better later on when you're actually writing the paper. You're like, I think I found this somewhere. No. You've got it written down very carefully in front of you. You know where that came from, and now you're plugging it in. Does that make sense? Okay. Reflection, section 3. Reflection's kind of an interesting thing. IB likes to have reflections in all kinds of different component parts and all kinds of different papers. For your reflections, there's lots of different ways you can go on that. Here's what you need to know. Don't go above 400 words. Don't go much above 400 words. Don't go much below 400 words. All right, so there you go. What kinds of things are you going to talk about? Well, look at those sample questions that are there. You're basically going to be talking about your process as a historian with this particular topic and the challenges that other historians like you have had to try and find the information on this topic. Don't be too general, but don't just say, we're in quarantine and we can't get nothing done. I mean, that actually could come up as a component of challenges that people would face as far as accessing information, but do a nice job on that section and the reflection, and you should be able to get at least 3 points, hopefully 4 points on that. Yeah. After that, it's in the handout, the little handout that I gave you. Right? It actually says so in there. You turn in your annotated bibliography. If you do that, there's actually a little bit tip there. As soon as you do that, then we'll get you signed up and we can set up a meeting. Okay? Sound good? All right. Let's turn to page, what is this, 88? Looks like this. It's got a lot of my handwriting at the bottom. Okay, Merrick, you still with me?
Of course I am.
All right, what page are we on?
87.
88. It's the next page. All right, so look at 88. All right. Do you see that chart there? That chart has information that's already previously covered as far as like the word allocation and the points or the marks or whatever. There's your 2,200 word limit. Okay? Oh, here's the thing right at the very top. Don't pad your bibliography with a bunch of sources that you don't actually include in your paper. Cash? If you find a bunch of sources, at least 6 good sources, put them in your paper and put them in your bibliography. If they're not in your paper, don't put them in the bibliography. Okay? All right. Next, the visual on the cover page. We talked about using Chicago style or MLA. Either one of those is fine. Write the number of words for each subsection. Shh. Write the word count on the cover page. Don't use abbreviations, WW2, things like that. Make it all professional. I actually think we've covered this pretty darn well. If you look at the remaining parts, it's the assessment criteria for each of the different sections, so read through that very carefully to make sure that you're doing it right. I think we're going to be in good shape. We'll talk about other kinds of things. Yeah, no, we're in good shape. We're done. All right, so for efficiency's sake, I'm going to go ahead and turn this off.
Hi, folks at home.
I already turned it off. We went through a whole bucket of wipes in 1 week. It was suggested that maybe one wipe could take care of, you've got in your hands enough to take care of all the desks. So one wipe can take care of a couple of desks. Thank you. So if you want to take turns and help each other out rather than, maybe we can stretch a bucket to 2 weeks. Oh, settle down.
Here, you can use this wipe on your desk too. Thanks, man.
Do you feel like you don't get enough time between periods to actually go to the bathroom then? That's what I know.
Well, hello there.
I don't want to keep you from getting to other classes on time because you need to use the restroom.
You can turn off bots in front of that. So cool!
Be nice. If you want people to be nice to you, try being nice to other people. I have not seen evidence of their lack of niceness to you.
Well, you don't still pay attention enough.
I think it's still recording.
See, you just hit
No, actually, you're right. I think it is.
We're on YouTube.